Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. This is from a guy. He is in his early 50s and he spent a great chunk of his life in the military. And he's going to share his story that has a span of like almost 35 years of his experiences starting off as a young man in the military and how he obviously, his experiences with women, his very, very bad marriage where he just was essentially trapped because of the system and how it benefits the gals, married to a crazy girl, and just all this stuff that he goes through as a result of his obviously not having as much knowledge that a lot of guys have today about the gals in reality, and also a system that pretty much sticks it to guys. And you're going to see here through his story all the crap he goes through and the things he learns along the way. However, you're going to see eventually, even when he gets older, he can get past all of it, and now his life is doing really well. He's on his own. He's living a life at his own terms. No debt, got money. He's got a purpose, something he enjoys. He is living in this great place where he has all these acreage of land, nobody to bother him. The dream, essentially, okay? But he went through a lot of hell to go through it. And I'm doing this, guys, for two big reasons. One, to share his story to warn a lot of you young guys what could potentially happen in the extreme case in terms of a negative impact if you do, in fact, get married, especially to the wrong girl, and how you can get raked over the coals from the system, essentially, as a man. To be aware of these things that could happen in the worst case scenario, which is why it's extremely important for your relationship, guys, to really screen or vet, if you will, the gals that you get into relationships with and really learn who they are before you get too serious, and especially taking the leap to move in with them, or worse yet, even get married. It's 2021. I encourage you guys, essentially, given how things are nowadays, and most of you should not get married, okay? But a lot of you are going to do it anyway, so you definitely have to learn how to really find out who they are. So many guys rush into relationships, or worse yet, move into with a girl or get married because they figure, hey, she's hot, she really likes me, this is the best I've ever gotten, this is as good as it's going to get. That's what everybody else does. You know, they move in with their girlfriend and get married, and they live to regret it. And it can impact them for decades, sometimes if they have kids and get married and all that. I'm also doing it for the guys that have been burned, for the guys that are in a bad situation right now, that you can see what this guy has gone through, and he goes through a whole lot of hell, but he's able to come out on the other side okay. And not just okay, but doing well and happy and thriving, essentially. Okay, so for you guys that aren't happy, there is a way out. You may have to go through pain in the short term, or even for a while, but you can get out. Just wanted to let you guys know there's always a way to move on, whatever the circumstances is, and really be happy. So, this is a longer one, guys, and I really enjoyed reading it. I really did to the guy who wrote this. I thank you for sending it. It was great, and it's really a cool hearing because he ties in what's going on in his life, but also things that are going on in the world at the time. Kind of a history story, if you will. Story starts off, he says, "Hi, SSM. I graduated in 1987. A year earlier, I got laid for the first time, and I learned a lot from that little SLUT. But not enough, it seems. I learned what to look for to see if a girl was interested in me, and I knew she was not a long-term thing. She was practiced, so I was very careful to not get her pregnant. I met another girl somewhere around number 15 the fall of 1987. Single mother in a trailer park household." There's a red flag. "She had more red flags than a CCP parade, but I had no clue how they can all be the same, but appear so different. I enlisted in October 1988 and went off to basic training. I came home on leave for a few days before heading to Germany. I had already noticed a change in her, but I ignored it." Well, you shouldn't have ignored that, my man. "She came to see me in Germany for the holidays in 1989, and I got an idea of how she was while she was there. I got a nice big chunk of the Berlin Wall while I was stationed in Germany in 1989. It's on the shelf next to me right now. It reminds me of the horrors of Marxism, of which Effinism is a part." Dude, that's something. You got a little piece of the Berlin Wall. That's sure a good conversation piece when you have guests over. That's amazing. "I was supposed to go home on leave in 1990 and get married. Instead, I went home and I ended it with her." Good. Good for you. Unfortunately, what he did here, he didn't learn from this too much and makes a bigger mistake down the road, but thank God he ended it with her. "She decided to attack me, then called the cops and said I hit her. I avoided the police until I got back on the plane to Germany, but before I left, word had gotten around that I was in town, plus single, and the girls came out of the woodwork. Let's just say that I had a lot of fun on leave in June of 1990. She had been cheating on me the entire time. My friends confirmed it before I got home. I could have told you that, and I'm sure you nowadays, looking back, could have seen all the signs, but when you're young, you don't know any better. And this guy, he's right now at 52, 53 years old. There was no YouTube back then. There was no internet back then. You know, and guys were going to go read books on this. There probably weren't books on these type of things. In July, I met the second girl I was engaged to. She was an Arab and lived in Dubai. We got on great and are still friends today. More than 30 years later, but due to some racist people in my unit and her mother not wanting me to marry an American, we did not get married. Her father and I got along great. He was a good man. Life didn't turn out so well for her either. She is not a focal point in this, just someone who probably would have been good for me, or at least better than the rest of them. Well, knowing what I know how your story is going to go, I'm sure she was. I'm 52 years old now, she is 58, and recently married to an 80-year-old widower. Because he doesn't want his estate going to the state, his money going to the state, since he has no kids, everyone is well aware of the dynamic. I figure, why not? If the dude wants to leave everything to her for a few cuddles before he goes, fine. He can't get it up anyway, but anyway, back to the shit show. Just reading this story, you can tell this guy, he's a cool guy. He'd be the kind of guy you want to have a beer with. You can just tell as you wrote this story. I was sitting there literally on the couch just chilling last night, having a drink with my cat next to me, reading this guy's story on my phone, and I just laughed the entire time. It was that good. He says, now the Gulf War happens. I am neck deep in that shit. Long story, lots of work, and I pack on 35 pounds of muscle for my job. I come back to the States in September 1991. Then the drawdown ends up with me being discharged in 1992 because my job, not related, no longer required nearly 3,000 people in my unit. And it shrunk to 600, and now I'm 50 pounds over my maximum weight. They did it to me. They punished me for fun times. I met a cute girl with a nice ass and big, firm, perky tits in the wee hours of June 3rd, 1993. I was drunk from free birthday drinks at the bars, and I asked her, do you have a boyfriend? She said no, so I asked, do you want one? She came out of my apartment later that day, and we had several hours of bedroom fun. Her face was okay, but her body was quite nice, so I continued to hit it for a while. Then she started with the irrational fights, and I would see her at her mom's house, and her ex-boyfriend would be leaving as I got there. Okay, man, this is when you check out. This is when you leave. Irrational fights means she's a drama queen. Maybe she's got some issues. Maybe she's bipolar. A lot of things going on there. But the point is, starting drama, which you don't need. Okay? Okay, that's fine. You met her at a bar on your birthday. You hooked up with her that night. That should tell you something. And coming out of her mom's house with her ex-boyfriend. These are all big. This is the universe sending you signs to get out of there. Unfortunately, a lot of guys don't pay attention to that. The very day I decide I'm done with her BS, and I'm going to release her to the greater opportunity because she can't be trusted and she likes to fight over nothing. She then informs me that she's, wait for it, pregnant. Well, how do you know if it's yours? If she's having her ex-boyfriend over. You don't. I thought about it, and I figured 25 is an okay time to start having kids, and my dad pressured me to marry her. Ugh. No. No. The drama, the fighting, the fact that she's starting drama and fights. She's back with the ex-boyfriend in the picture. These are all bad signs. No, you don't marry. Okay. Let's just say it's your kid. Okay, then you got an obligation to that kid. You know, but it doesn't mean you got to marry her. But again, this is 1991. Believe it or not, it's a different world, depending also where he lives. And he said flat out his dad obviously has an influence on him. The only reason I married her is I mistakenly thought the healthcare where I worked would pay for the births. Turns out it was essentially a savings account with zero interest. They only paid out what I paid in. I tried for years to get her to stop starting the fights, being irrational and doing all the stupid shit, but it progressively got worse. Of course it got worse. That's how it works, because now you're married to her. You have a kid with her. She knows that she can do whatever she wants because you're going to get raked over the coals if you try to divorce her, and alimony and child support and splitting of the assets and amongst many other things. But this is her character. This is her nature. Okay? So Yet we can all look back and say, oh, you should have never slept with her that night, but that night you were drinking in a bar, it was your birthday, your senses weren't there. But afterwards, when she wasn't pregnant and she started these irrational fights just to create drama, that's when it should have been out of there. You're a young guy, you're a military guy, you can get other women. She had me stressed every day, and I have had PTSD since I was a kid owing to family issues. The female thing is the tip of the iceberg. There is a lot more to my story, but this will be long enough as this. She got worse, but got pregnant again. Smack. Another one with her? You're just digging your grave deeper, my man. With my second daughter, who was born in 1997. I bought a house in 1996, used my VA loan, and it was well within my means at only $37,000 a year, and I was bringing in $500 to $700 a week as a machinist in a factory. Well, Clinton signed NAFTA, and my job went to Mexico. I remember that. 1997, I was 19 at the time. I was starting to really pay attention to things that were going on. My dad encouraged me to do so. I remember that. I had some... excuse me. I had some 401k money from the factory, so I was going to use that to get my auto repair shop off the ground. My wife blew through nearly $10,000 in 2 weeks. She had bitched and moaned while I had the factory job, wanting access to the account so she could take care of the bills. Except when I left her to the bills, she did not pay them, and I came home to the house with no power, no gas, no water, and the mortgage was a month behind, and she had $400 overdrawn in the bank account. I bet you're looking back at that moment to the night you met her and said I should have just passed on the SEX, or afterwards I should have left when the red flags were showing. This guy's trapped now. She steadily got more abusive to me and my daughters. Of course, that's how it works. It doesn't get better, it just gets worse and worse. I have a divot in the back of my head from the coffee mug she threw at me because I was ignoring her ranting and screeching. She needed me to react and engage with her so she could lose the fight and feel like the victim. If you're not catching on yet, she's a textbook bipolar. That's what I thought when I initially wrote this. She was rapid cycling. Minute to minute, she would go from manic to depressive, living with a horny June Cleaver who changes to a mix between Charles Manson and Hitler before the bra hits the floor was a lot to endure. Oh my God. So, quick intermission for you young guys that think you want to get married. or you're with your girl right now, and maybe there's some issues. You want to pay attention to those issues, to her drama, her pick and fights, all that crap. Or you want to make sure, as this guy's showing you, you really screen your girls before you get serious with them. Okay, back to the story. So try to use SEX as a weapon. Well, they all do. Let's be honest here. Try to manipulate me by withholding from me. I stopped giving an F and would not do what she wanted because the no sex was going to happen. She would put it off once she got what she wanted, dangling it like a carrot on a stick. I don't play like that. I made her rage even more, taking out on the kids and I. I stayed to protect the kids from her as much as I could, and I was teaching them as much as I could. Reading, writing, shapes, colors, crawling, walking, riding bikes, math. They were all well ahead of other kids when they started school. See, he's putting up with her craziness and literally the abuse because he doesn't want to leave the kids alone with her. Because he also knows if he leaves her and divorces her, she's going to get the kids, and now no one's going to protect those kids, and he's going to get raked over the coals. The guy is trapped. It's terrible. The first letters they learned were GTO, and the nose of my 1970 GTO. Their mom still complains to them about that car, saying I did whatever I wanted no matter what she said. Yep, she's right. She could not control me. When the cops would come by, and I was bleeding from her cutting and assaulting me, no marks on her at all, my shirt ripped to shreds, they only cared if I touched her. Of course. They wanted desperately to arrest me and did nothing to her. Bear in mind, I'm not a small, timid man. I have military training and I wrestled for years. And at that point, I weighed about 230 and could bench over 400 pounds easily. Any man who did to me what she did would probably not survive it. She had the state behind her, though. She knew if she had me arrested, I would shut her out completely, kicking her out of the house, and she would sue for damages and custody. This poor bastard in this situation. And a lot of guys get stuck in bad situations in varying degrees. I don't want that to happen to you guys. I caught her cheating with her best friend's husband that lived across the street from us. By then, I knew the state would give her full custody, and I didn't want to F her anymore. So I told her if she gets pregnant, I'm not going to pay for it. I would have banged the best friend, but she was too distraught over the whole thing. Remember how NAFTA sent my job to Mexico, and how she burned through all my seed money in 2 weeks? Well, all the customers had no jobs either. So I closed my shop and enlisted in the military again in 2000. It was the best job opportunity I had. I got to base in March, she showed up in June, and she was not allowed to access my money. A bad check on base will cost me hard-earned stripes, and she is shit with money. Around April of 2001, she started spending time with another couple in the base housing, then spending the entire night. They were making naughty videos that were going all over the base. She is something. Well, she is a piece of something. Again, this guy must look back more times you can count on those nights. That night when he met her in the bar. The chick told her that I was doing bad things to her by not handing over my entire paycheck for her to decide how to use, and me asking her for money. She went to my first sergeant and told him that she had left me and I was not giving her any money. He asked if this was the first thing I knew about it, and said, if a woman stays with a man who is doing bad things to her, she is stupid for staying, right? They looked at me and said, it stands to reason then, and I said, yeah, it does. Then one day in June, when the husband of that chick was discharged for looking at bad things involving kids on a government computer, my soon-to-be ex left with them. I had a 4-inch thick folder documenting her abuse to me and the kids, signed by my chain of command up to the base commander. She had been a problem for a year that she was on base, and my unit knew the position that I was in. If I stopped her, I went to jail. If I left the house, she would do horrible things to the kids in my stead. See? He was trapped. I deployed in late August 2001 and was in Kuwait the same day some a-holes flew planes into the World Trade Center. I came back into an entirely different world in December. Oh my God. We all can remember what we were doing that day when that happened. I'll never forget that. I was 23. I'd been in business, my first business. I'd started in February. It was off to a running start. I was doing fantastic. I was off to my accountant's office that meeting. I was sitting there having breakfast, watching CNBC as the first plane, when the first plane hit the tower. And I had to leave. And I was like, holy crap. And at first, everybody thought it was just like an accident, you know? And then I was off to meet my accountant, and we were doing the numbers because I was doing so well business-wise. And then the second one hit, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. All of us will. It's like when people that were alive in 1963 remember what happened when they found out that JFK was killed. And this guy was already over in that part of the world. Well, he was over in the part of the world where eventually... Well, we know the rest. It says here, I got effed around by my immediate supervisor, common theme for me, long story there, and he ended up with a bad conduct discharge from there. The effect was I did not have a lawyer for my first court date back home. I got roasted alive. The judge started me out 6 months in arrears, and the state decided 71% of my gross income was just right. State law said no more than 68% of net, and that they must leave me $950 to live on. But who cares when they are the state and they enforce the laws? That was $1,200 a month, and I only made $1,740 a month of taxable income. I can't live in base housing without dependents, can't live on the base at E4, so I was living in my car, on friends' couches, and eating once a day, trying to stretch out my $50 paychecks that came twice a month. Oh my God. Again, because he and the wife broke up. They're divorced, and she's got the kid. She got custody, and now he's got to send money to her, amongst all those other things that he wasn't paying. He shouldn't have had to pay for, but the state had to pay for. What a mess. That house back home that I've been paying for, her mother let her idiot brother live in it for free, so I couldn't rent or sell it. No way I was going to be able to pay the $350 a month mortgage with $100 a month to live on. So I called the bank and told them to foreclose it. He says, remember that 6 months in arrears? Well, that kind of adds up. At $5,000 behind in support, the state revokes your driver's license, passport, and any professional license you have. It is just a never-ending shit cycle. Because now, because he's in arrears for the money owed for support, all the different licenses, passport. So it's like, how can he drive to his job to make money to pay for the child support, amongst many other things, if he doesn't have a driver's license? Or how can he do his job if it requires a special license if that's revoked? You see the idiocy of this? And again, this is all because of actions she took, but because he's a guy, and this is obviously at that time and still now, he gets raked over the coals. Always wear protection, guys, and always dispose of your protection, and never for a second buy the whole "I'm on the pill" thing. He said that also included my security clearance. And one day I went from being able to live and function to being an indentured servant to the state and driving illegally. The military did not take kindly to all that and decided to punish me and send me for financial retraining. I'm quite good with money, but when it is all taken from you, what can you do? Live in a ratty 1970 GTO is what you do. From July 2001 to February 2004, the only time I got to sleep in a bed indoors was when I banged some chick deployed, and the year I spent in Korea going behind in child support because taxes and the child support would have left me with even the $100 a month I was getting. No BAH housing allowance or BAS food allowance in Korea, and they had figured both of those into my child support payment. They're not supposed to because when you go somewhere like Korea, you don't get them. The state just wants their pound of flesh. They don't give an F if it's legal or not. I'm sure there are guys watching this that can nod their heads and say, yeah, pretty much. My parents got me a lawyer who would not fight for me. He just pushed paper through and told me to stop shirking my responsibilities. He submitted the folder of evidence, and the retired Marine judge threw it out without even looking at it. He had been censured by the state for not giving everything to the mother and effing over fathers, so he got in line and obeyed them. In 2004, she finally agreed to only $650 a month in support, and I got promoted to E5 back in 2002. But it took them until 2004 to pay me for it. 2 years. They had effed up my records because I had been out 7 years and it did not fit the computer system they were using. All the back pay was taken by taxes and child support when they finally did start paying me. This just never ends for this guy. This guy's going through hell. You guys can see this here now. But don't worry, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. In 2004, finally having an apartment, I met a new girl who was like 13 years younger than my 34-year-old ex. He's 13 years younger than my 34-year-old ass. A 21-year-old virgin when I met her and popped it. She was different from every girl I'd known before, like the Arab girl. Kinda homely, but an okay body, submissive, very smart, and eager to please while taking care of me. Dude, after everything you went through, I would be avoiding these young girls like the plague. 100% getting your life together. Okay? Some people gotta just go through pain after more pain after more pain to learn. He says here, I deployed again in 2004 and came back barely able to walk. I would never run again. And I lived in pain ever since. They discharged me in August 2005, and I decided rather than going to my home state, I had to enlist twice to escape, with the child support looming over my head. I would go to Michigan, where the new girl was from. Nearly 2 years before the VA decided how disabled I was, then another 2 years before Social Security agreed and started sending money to my ex-wife. 4 years I could not pay support, 8 years with a bench warrant for me, and punitive measures of taking money from me illegally as I tried to pay back the arrears. They even put the bill on me for when she tried to off herself a full year after the divorce was final. That was $8,000. Somehow they felt I was responsible for it. You know, people wonder why there's so many men's channels that have been popping up over the last few years, telling stories like this, warning guys about these things, and we're the bad guys? What a load of crap. I got to see my daughters a total of 12 days between May 2001 and May 2008. Oh my God. One of the ex-boyfriends decided it was a good idea to do things to one of my daughters, and the ex said, well, that happens. God. If I had not been 1,000 miles away with zero money, thanks to the state taking it all as a punitive measure, people would have died over that. I bet. From 2011 to 2013, things are working out better, and I was able to get things done. Hallelujah, we're getting to a light at the end of the tunnel here. In 2013, I'm divorced from the homely girl just before she hits 31, only married 16 months. I cannot believe you married this girl. After all you went through with the ex, I don't care how much she temporarily made you feel better. I gotta give you a hard time about that. Come on, dude. After all that, you got married to another one. Some people just have to go through so much shit before they learn. For 8 years, she was wonderful, stood by me through all the financial shit, the chronic pain, the deployment, discharge, the issues relating to my military time. Then we get married, and I get sick for a few months from paint chemicals, painting something for her dad, and she decides to burn her life to the ground for a kid 20 years, 20 years younger than me. The dude is socially inept, nobody can stand him, he has no common sense, isn't very bright, can't keep a job, so her dad is supporting both of them. He was already balding at 26 with those bonker jowls, and that is her soulmate. I guess losers are better for each other. Notice everything was good with them until they got married. Little lesson there for your relationship guys. Meanwhile, I am a muscle-bound, two-war combat vet that can still bang college girls at 52 years old, and I have all my hair. She chose poorly to say the least. On the bright side, no alimony, no kids, but the downside is she falsely accused me, and I got sat in jail for 15 days for things I could not possibly have done. Well, I'm glad no kids, I'm glad no alimony and no splitting of assets or anything like that, but she had to leave you with something, so a little jail time. She had to feel like the victim since she caused the problem. In 2015, I was done paying for the first ex. Thank God. All those years you had to pay, oh, the hell you went through. Here's where it starts to get good. Thank you. In 2013, I had to buy some land to store vehicles I had managed to keep through all the BS, and 13 acres popped up for sale cheap, half a mile from where I lived with the second ex. I sold some stuff, got a couple grand for my parents, and bought the place. It's woodland with a rundown cabin on it, but it was not livable. But I had a well and grid power run to it already, 300 trees between the highway and the cabin, so it's perfect for what I wanted to do. That sounds awesome. The older I get, the more I'm appreciating when I was a young kid, where my parents, my family, my grandparents bought all this land in Pennsylvania, about an hour from Philly, in the 1940s or 50s. And eventually they moved there from New York. And grandparents and all, had my mom, my uncle, and everybody, and it was about 57, 60 acres. And I grew up a big chunk of my childhood there after my family moved from California. And at the time I hated it because it was too quiet and boring, but it was all fields and trees and creek and quiet. You can see all the stars, and that looks like a planetarium even now. And I was always so bored with it growing up, but now when I go there to visit on occasion, it's so peaceful. I look at it completely different now that I'm in my mid-40s. So what he's got here, the space, the peace and quiet, sounds awesome. It was in October 2013. I closed on it. June 2015, I had finally gotten a loan from my hometown bank to start building. My dad put up a car as collateral, a 1970 Cuda. He left it to me when he passed in 2020. Bittersweet. In July 2015, I started cutting down trees, ripping out stumps, and clearing for a 32 to 48 shop so I can work on vehicles and do frame-off restorations and drive them. I can't afford muscle cars already done, so I build them. Keeps me busy and makes me feel like I have a purpose. Having held a job since 2005, I endured a lot of pain to build my shop and house. I couldn't afford to pay people, so I did it for me, so I did it. Good, you did what you had to do. You couldn't afford to pay people to do it, so you learned, you taught yourself, and you did it. That's cool. And notice he said he has a purpose, restoring cars. I built my shop, did all the foundation work, hired guys to help me with the walls and roof, poured a slab of concrete with the two guys from the concrete company. Bought 4 shipping containers, cut 3 of them into 20 by 24 studio, and lived in that for a few years. In 2019, I reconfigured the containers into larger 2-story house. I have around 24,000 in the house. A lot of people are doing that, taking these old shipping containers and turning them into houses. It's pretty interesting. If you're a single guy, you don't give a shit, it's an interesting option. I got a 10-year note on the mortgage and 8 years of the building loans. I paid it all off in February 21 ahead of schedule. I wanted 5-year notes, but the banks would not do that. They wanted the interest. Well, that's how they make money. Here I am, 52 years old, debt-free, several muscle cars, money in the bank, the chronic pain is lessened, and I have passive income. Good. I daily drive a 65 GTO I rebuilt from 2009 to 2015 and repainted in 2016. I started on the 69 and 70 GTOs. He says, yeah, I still have the one I lived in the spring. I still get interest from girls 18 and up, but I'm not going to risk everything I built on another one. Dude, so help me God, if you, after everything you've been through and where you are now, where you're debt-free, you got money, you got your own place, you got your land, you got your purpose, you got your shop, if you screwed all up over some young piece of ass, I swear to God, I'm going to find you and kill you. Okay, bro? You're doing great. Enjoy yourself. He says, I got a vasectomy when I was 38, so I will F them, but that's it. They get no money or support from me either. Just silverback gorilla effing. Where could I be now if I had not put that albatross around my neck back in 1993? He's referring to his crazy ex. Do me a favor and tell young men to avoid the mistakes I made. Oh, I do on a daily basis. Getting back up when life knocks you down is one thing, but struggling for another 20 years to get out from under servitude you bought on yourself is at least avoidable. If you want to see my shop and cars, check out my channel. I'm about to start getting serious about the content, have some big projects in the works, making ethanol fuel and building cars to run on it. I will check out your channel. He left a link for me to check it out. But anyhow, guys, crazy story, huh? Here come the sirens. But that goes to show you got a whole lifetime here of all the crap, what he went through. And I thought it was very interesting, him tying in the times what was going on. The Gulf War, the Berlin Wall coming down, then the Gulf War, then eventually 9/11, all this other stuff going on in the world. It's interesting storytelling there. But the point is, look at all the crap he went through. Pure hell. And because of one crazy chick, okay, and because of the laws against the guy, raked over the coals. And just living in his car all those years because literally they were taking away everything out of his paycheck for this, and this. And she was awful. So, guys, the lesson from the story is be very careful if indeed you decide to get married one day who you're marrying. But get to know who she really is and all those other things. Or better yet, don't get married nowadays, how things are. And the other lesson is, all the shit he went through, this guy kept on grinding. He survived. And now, finally, he's a free man and doing well for himself, and he's happy and at peace, and that's awesome. He's 52. He's got plenty of time ahead of him to enjoy himself. So any of you guys are in bad situations, you can turn it around too. But you got to be strong, and you may have to go through hell, but you can do it. So, all right, guys, that's it for today. I know it was a long one. Thank you for sticking with me. I'm sure those of you that like long stories when you're on the drive or you're at the gym, hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to comment down below and let me know what you think about this. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.